They say every civilization has its archives, its libraries, its ways of remembering. For the Galactic Federation, a council of thousands of species spanning millions of light years, it was supposed to be sterile records, polished speeches, and the carefully maintained history of progress. But that is only the official story. The real tales, the ones whispered in mess halls, broadcast in quiet channels, and shared on the interstellar equivalent of a late-night forum, were very different. If you ever wanted to know what the Federation really was, you did not read the documents written by politicians. You listened to the voices of the ones who had lived it, the captains, the soldiers, the colonists, the smugglers, and sometimes the unlucky wanderers who stumbled into something far greater than themselves. These voices found each other on what humans jokingly began to call the Federation's Reddit. It was never meant to exist, but once it did, it became the place where the truth lived. The first post that hooked the galaxy came from a human Marine stationed at the edge of Federation space. The title was simple. They told us humans were reckless. Then I saw why they keep us around. The story began with his arrival on a backwater station orbiting a red dwarf, a place meant to be nothing more than a refueling hub. The alien stationed there considered it dull, safe, a punishment assignment for those who had displeased their superiors. Yet on the first night, alarms screamed. A pirate fleet descended, one that had been terrorizing the frontier for decades. According to the Marine, the aliens panicked. Their commanders froze, their soldiers scrambled without orders. But the humans on board, just 30 of them, locked eyes, loaded their rifles, and prepared to fight. The Marine wrote, "We knew the odds. We knew we were outnumbered 20-1. But no one hesitated. We have a saying, if the galaxy is going to kill you, you do not wait politely. You punch first." The post spread like wildfire. Aliens from across the Federation could not believe what they read. To many, humanity had always been seen as unstable newcomers, unpredictable and dangerous. Yet here was proof that this danger was exactly why the Federation had brought them in. Not for diplomacy, not for science, but because when the stars turned hostile, humans did not run. Thousands of comments followed. An insectoid engineer described the first time she worked with a human crew, how they laughed while repairing a reactor that could have gone critical at any second. A reptilian diplomat confessed that he had once been terrified of humans until he watched one stand between a civilian transport and a warship, buying just enough time for families to escape. A synthetic intelligence admitted that it could not calculate why humans charged into hopeless battles, only that the galaxy was safer because they did. The Federation tried to shut the forum down. That only made it grow. Soon more stories appeared. Some were humorous, like the account of a human officer teaching aliens the concept of barbecue by roasting meat over an engine exhaust. Others were tragic, like the post from a survivor of the Lornax uprising who described watching human volunteers fight street by street to save a city that was not even their own. And then there were the horror stories, the ones that chilled even the bravest species. Encounters with entities beyond the void, shadows that consumed entire fleets, and how humanity, more than anyone else, seemed willing to stare into the darkness without blinking. The hook of these stories was always the same. No matter how strange, terrifying, or absurd the galaxy became, humans were at the center, shaping it in ways no other species could. But what made the forum legendary was not just the posts. It was the confessions. There was the alien admiral who admitted that he once considered humans expendable, only to watch them save his flagship by ramming their own vessel into an enemy dreadnought. There was the scientist who confessed she had stolen human medical protocols because they worked better than her people's methods, even if they seemed brutal. And perhaps most hauntingly, there was the anonymous post, unsigned, untranslated, but clearly from someone high within the Federation Council who admitted, "We never expected humans to last. We brought them in as tools, but now we fear them, because they do not fear death, and that makes them unstoppable." Humans, of course, saw the forum differently. To them, it was entertainment, a place to laugh at their reputation, to tease each other about being called reckless or mad. But beneath the humor was a quiet pride. They knew the galaxy was finally telling the truth, Not the polished lies of politicians, but the raw stories of survival and sacrifice. And as the stories spread, something began to change in the Federation. Other species started to imitate human behavior. Soldiers drilled not just in discipline, but in improvisation. Engineers stopped waiting for perfect solutions and began asking, "What can we do right now?" Even alien civilians started quoting human mottos: "We do not surrender. We do not run." The Federation's archives would never admit it, but the truth was clear. Humanity had infected the galaxy, not with violence, not with chaos, but with defiance. And once that spark had spread, there was no way to put it out. The first section of the forum ended with one final story. A human colonist posting from a half-frozen outpost at the edge of nowhere. His words were simple: "We are not the strongest, the fastest, or the smartest. But when the galaxy thinks it has broken us, that is when we rise. That is when we show them why we are still here." It was not just a story. It was a warning, and the galaxy listened. If Section 1 of the forum was filled with awe and confusion, Section 2 was where the tone began to shift. The stories were no longer just about admiration or humor. They became darker, heavier, confessions whispered by those who had seen what humans could truly become when pushed to the brink. One of the most upvoted threads came from a veteran officer of the Athari Guard, a species known for their rigid discipline and strict adherence to codes of honor. His post began with a warning: "If you think you want humans in your ranks, understand this. You are inviting monsters into your wars." He described a battle at the edge of the Thalos Rift, where an alien insurgency had cornered Federation forces inside a collapsing station. The enemy had cut off oxygen, sabotaged the reactors, and left the garrison to suffocate. While most species fell into despair, the humans did not. The officer recalled how they stripped their armor for parts, turned power cells into improvised bombs, and carved tunnels through bulkheads with plasma torches. "They looked like corpses before the end," the Athari wrote. "Burned, half dead, but they kept fighting. They kept smiling. When reinforcements finally arrived, there were only 8 humans left. 8, surrounded by 200 enemy soldiers. They were laughing as they charged, teeth red with blood, eyes bright with fire. That day I realized why we keep them close, because they are not afraid to become monsters." The replies beneath that post told the galaxy everything. Some called the humans insane. Others called them terrifying. But buried in the thousands of comments, a single human reply stood out: "We are not monsters. We just know that monsters are the only thing that can scare the dark." It was not long before others shared similar tales. Medic from the crystalline Vayari species told the story of patching up human soldiers after a brutal siege. She admitted that their methods horrified her, cauterizing wounds with heated knives, stitching arteries together with thread scavenged from clothing, forcing each other to keep moving when most species would have collapsed. But what disturbed her most was not the brutality. It was the way humans encouraged each other with jokes, as if laughter itself was part of their medicine. "They heal themselves with madness," she wrote. "And somehow, it works." Another story came from a captain of the Yeleth, a species that had prided themselves on their advanced warships. His fleet had been ambushed by raiders and would have been annihilated, if not for the human frigate that charged headlong into the enemy flagship. The captain described the moment vividly. Their ship was tearing apart, engines bleeding fire, but they did not stop. They rammed the flagship at full speed, tearing it in half. There was no hesitation. They were laughing on the comms as they went, and in their sacrifice they saved us all. The forum exploded with debate. Was this bravery or madness? Heroism or recklessness? To the galaxy it was impossible to tell, but to humans it was simple. As one reply put it, "If you are going to die anyway, make sure the enemy dies with you." But the darkest story came from an anonymous source. The post was titled, "The Day I Saw Humanity Break the Rules of War." The writer claimed to have been part of a classified mission on a frontier world overtaken by an unknown parasitic species. The infestation spread so quickly that evacuation became impossible. The official Federation order was clear: quarantine the system and abandon those trapped inside. But the humans refused. They landed anyway. The poster described in chilling detail how the humans burned cities, not to kill the civilians, but to stop the spread. They carried flamethrowers into hospitals, detonated charges inside schools, and destroyed everything that could be infected. To the poster, it was monstrous, an atrocity beyond comprehension. But when the Federation reviewed the system centuries later, they found no trace of the parasite. The humans had not just fought, they had saved the galaxy. The threat became infamous. Some called it propaganda, others called it a war crime. But the haunting comment pinned to the top summed it all up. You call it horror, we call it Tuesday. That was when the Federation truly began to fear, because these were not isolated incidents. These were patterns. Again and again, humans stepped into situations where no one else dared, and again, they came out alive, or if not alive, victorious in death. They bent the rules of survival until they snapped, and in doing so, they redefined what survival even meant. Other species began to notice changes in themselves. Othari soldiers started telling jokes in battle, even though their culture once considered laughter a weakness. Vayari medics began using human triage methods, patching up patients with crude but effective tools. The Yelith rewrote their naval doctrines, adding a new maneuver called the human charge, a suicidal tactic that had somehow saved more lives than it cost. Humanity was not just part of the Federation anymore. Humanity was reshaping it, and yet the humans on the forum seemed almost oblivious. They laughed at the stories, called themselves crazy, and traded memes about how every species thought they were death-obsessed lunatics. They did not see themselves the way others did. To them, it was not bravery or horror. It was just what needed to be done. The Federation, however, could no longer look away, because for every story of humor, for every post of sacrifice, there were darker whispers. Stories of human soldiers who would not stop fighting even after losing limbs. Tales of humans who embraced the void, who looked at horrors that broke entire fleets and simply muttered, "Is that all you have?" The forum was no longer just a curiosity. It had become a warning board, a record of a truth the Federation could not admit out loud, that humanity was not like anyone else, and that if the galaxy ever pushed them too far, humanity would not break. They would burn, and they would take everything down with them. The Federation Council never meant to take the forum seriously. At first, it was dismissed as just another human joke, an endless thread of exaggerations and wild tales. But as the stories piled up, as alien officers, medics, and diplomats from dozens of species shared their encounters with humans, the Council began to pay attention. Behind closed doors, intelligence agencies started monitoring the forum, not for security breaches, not for classified leaks, but for insight into the human mind. The counselors knew that if even half of the stories were true, they were dealing with something far more dangerous than they had anticipated. One internal report, leaked years later, summed it up with chilling clarity. Humans are not defined by strength, nor by intelligence, nor even by technology. They are defined by refusal. Refusal to surrender, refusal to die, refusal to let others dictate the limits of possibility. They are, quite literally, a refusal given flesh. The Council did not dare publish such words, but they could not ignore them either. What troubled them most was how the influence of humanity was spreading. Other species, long considered cautious and pragmatic, were beginning to take risks they would never have considered before. Officers began citing human tactics during war councils. Colonists referenced human endurance when facing famine. Even civilians far from the front lines started repeating human sayings like charms against fear. Pain is temporary. Victory is forever. It was not just admiration. It was infection. Humanity's madness was contagious. The forum documented this shift with almost gleeful abandon. Posts poured in from alien users describing the first time they tried something the human way. One Yayari engineer admitted that he had once been terrified of heights, unable to climb more than a few steps without trembling. But after working alongside humans on a starship repair mission, he forced himself to crawl across an exposed hull during a plasma storm. He wrote, "I kept hearing their voices in my head. If you are scared, you are alive. If you are alive, you keep moving." When I made it back inside, the humans clapped me on the back and called me family. I think I finally understood them. Another post from a council clerk of the insectoid Karin species described how she once broke protocol to save an entire transport ship. Normally, her species prized rules above all else. But when faced with an emergency, she asked herself what a human would do. She rerouted the transport without authorization, saving over 2,000 lives. Her superior reprimanded her. The humans on the forum celebrated her as a hero. The replies were a strange mixture of encouragement and warnings. Humans wrote things like, "Congratulations, welcome to chaos," or "Next time remember, breaking rules is only fun if it works." It was a dangerous game, and the council knew it. Humanity was not just fighting wars. They were rewriting the moral codes of entire civilizations, but perhaps the most haunting stories came from those who had once feared. Humans, most a thread titled, "We tried to kill them. We failed," became infamous across the forum. It was posted by a former commander of the reshaped, a species that had once waged war against the Federation before being crushed into submission. His confession was raw, filled with bitterness and awe. He described how his fleet had cornered a human convoy, outnumbered and outgunned. Victory was certain, yet the humans did not retreat. Instead, they activated their warp cores, detonating their ships in a chain reaction that destroyed half of his fleet. The survivors of the convoy were vaporized, but so were thousands of his own warriors. "We called them cowards for not fighting to the end," he wrote. "But the truth is we feared them more after that. They would rather erase themselves than give us victory. What kind of species does this? What kind of creatures laugh as they burn?" The replies poured in. Humans joked about how they speed-ran the battle, about how going nuclear is a valid strategy, about how if you cannot win, redefine winning. But buried among the humor were darker admissions. One human wrote, "We do it because we know you will never do it. That is our weapon. We do the things that break you because we are already broken." The thread shook the Federation. It was no longer possible to deny the truth. Humanity was dangerous, not just because of what they could do, but because of what they were willing to do. And yet, for all the fear, there was still fascination. Species who once avoided humans now sought them out, hoping to learn their secrets. Young officers from across the Federation begged for assignments on human-crewed ships. Colonists requested human advisors during crises. Even merchants began advertising products as tested by humans as a mark of durability. The council debated endlessly. Was this alliance strengthening the Federation or corrupting it? Were humans saviors or destroyers in disguise? The forum itself seemed to revel in the chaos. Every week, new stories emerged. Some were inspiring, others horrifying. But together, they painted a picture that no report could capture. A picture of a species that laughed in the face of extinction, that turned madness into survival, that made every ally stronger and every enemy weaker simply by existing. And slowly, the galaxy began to whisper a question no one dared ask aloud. What happens if the humans turn against us? The council had no answer. The forum had thousands. Most were jokes. Some were warnings. But one reply, upvoted into legend, stood above all others. If humanity turns against you, pray. Not for victory. Not for mercy. Pray that we are merciful enough to stop when you are already broken. The deeper the Federation intelligence networks dug into the human forum, the more unsettled the council became. This was no longer just a collection of anecdotes and exaggerated tales. Hidden among the memes and banter, humans were quietly sharing pieces of their history, fragments of wars that most aliens could barely comprehend. One thread in particular shook the council chambers to their core. It was titled, "You think the galaxy is dangerous? Let me tell you about ourselves." The poster was a human historian, not a soldier, not a warrior. Yet the story he told painted a portrait of humanity far more terrifying than any battlefield account. He spoke of Earth's ancient wars, fought long before faster-than-light travel, long before the Federation had ever heard the name human. He described soldiers in trenches, choking on poison gas, clawing through mud while artillery shells turned the sky into fire. He told of nuclear firestorms that had leveled entire cities in the span of seconds. killing millions, yet leaving the species behind to keep fighting. He recounted tales of endless cold wars, proxy battles, genocides, uprisings, and revolutions. "Your galaxy thinks war is an interruption," he wrote. "For us, war was the background noise of civilization. For thousands of years, we fought ourselves harder than we have ever fought anyone else. Do you wonder why alien weapons do not scare us? It is because we already tested our nightmares on each other." The replies were a mix of shock and disbelief. Some alien users insisted it had to be fabrication, that no species could survive such horrors. Others, especially those who had fought beside humans, replied with grim agreement. They had seen the truth of it in human eyes. Another human added, "We are not brave. We are conditioned. We are not fearless. We are exhausted. Death is not a mystery to us. It is a neighbor we grew up with." The Council's intelligence officers flagged the thread immediately. Not because it contained sensitive military data, but because it revealed something even more dangerous. Context. Humanity was not an anomaly. Humanity was a consequence. They were the product of millennia of self-destruction, a crucible that burned away hesitation and left behind something that terrified the galaxy, resilience forged in their own blood. Other threads soon followed. Soldiers recounted Earth's insurgencies, where humans fought wars not with fleets or tanks, but with determination, hiding in jungles or deserts, refusing to yield even when every logistical supply line was cut. Strategists shared stories of asymmetric warfare, where humans had taken impossible odds and turned them into victories simply by refusing to play by the rules. One alien user, a historian from the long-lived Elvari species, responded with horror. "If even half of these stories are true, then humanity has more experience in war than most of the Federation combined. You did not enter this galaxy as children, you entered as veterans." And the humans, of course, responded with humor. "We speedrun war," one joked. Another added, "Galaxy DLC unlocked, and we are already on hard mode." But buried beneath the jokes, there was something else. A kind of pride. Not the pride of conquest, but the pride of survival. Humanity did not tell these stories to boast. They told them to remind themselves of what they had endured, and to warn anyone who might think them weak. The Council debated fiercely behind closed doors. Some argued that humanity's history proved they were too dangerous, that their alliance with the Federation was a mistake. Others countered that this was exactly why they were indispensable. In a galaxy filled with threats, parasites, warlords, empires, unknown horrors lurking beyond the rim, who else but the humans would stand unbroken when all others faltered? The debate never ended. It only grew louder with every new story. Meanwhile, the forum continued to thrive. It was no longer just a curiosity for humans and their allies. It became a living archive, a cultural exchange unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Species who had once hidden their darkest fears now shared them, emboldened by humanity's willingness to bear its scars. A Yathari diplomat wrote of their ancient civil wars, which had nearly extinguished their species. A Drevik miner described a ritual where his people scarred themselves before dangerous missions to remind each other of the price of survival. And in response, humans did not recoil. They embraced these stories, welcomed them, laughed with them, cried with them. One alien user summed it up perfectly. Humans do not just share their survival. They invite us to survive with them. But for every moment of solidarity, there were threads that reminded everyone of just how alien humans truly were. A classified post, later leaked to the forum, told the story of a Federation black site experiment. Scientists had attempted to measure how long humans could withstand extreme isolation in deep space environments. They expected breakdowns, hallucinations, madness. Instead, the humans began inventing entire imaginary societies. Some composed music, others wrote novels. A few built religions, complete with prayers and rituals. The report ended with a chilling line. Other species go mad in isolation. Humans create new worlds. This revelation spread across the forum like wildfire. Aliens could not decide if it was inspiring or terrifying. To many, it confirmed the deepest suspicion of all, that humanity was not just another species in the Federation. They were something fundamentally different. And still, the humans joked. "Put us in a box," one wrote, "and we will come out with a culture, a government, and a war plan." The council read these threads with growing unease. They were not just reading stories. They were watching a cultural revolution in real time. Humanity was not simply being studied. They were reshaping the galaxy's sense of what survival meant. And so a question began to spread in whispers across the Federation. It appeared in council chambers, in private messages, and even on the forum itself. What happens when the galaxy stops fearing death, the way humans already have? At first, the council thought the forum was just entertainment, a distraction. But then came the cultural shifts, quiet at first, then undeniable. Entire civilizations began absorbing human philosophy, bending their traditions to fit the strange, reckless spirit of Earth's children. It started with language. Alien phrases began to carry human idioms. Fayari healers, once known for their serene composure, started saying, "Walk it off," after performing complex surgeries, parroting what their human counterparts always told each other. Othari soldiers, whose discipline had never allowed for humor in war, began swapping jokes before charging into battle. Even species who had never laughed in their history began to mimic it, forcing strange guttural sounds from their throats as if trying to capture the power of human resilience. The forum documented every example with fascination. A Drevek miner posted, "I do not know what is wrong with me. My human crewmate said, if we die together." I laughed. I have never laughed at death before. Replies from humans flooded in, "Welcome to the club. It is only weird the first time. Death hates it when you laugh back." But this was more than imitation. Alien cultures began reshaping their laws, traditions, even religions. The Yelith priesthood, once strict in their worship of preservation, started incorporating human stories into their sermons. One alien priest was quoted saying, "Humans show us that survival is sacred, but not passive. To endure, we must defy." That word, defiance, became a rallying cry. Across colonies, citizens began painting human slogans on walls, repeating human battle cries as if they were spells against despair. The council grew alarmed. They called emergency sessions to discuss the human contagion. But by then, it was too late. A council report leaked on the forum revealed the full extent of the crisis. Kareen youth were abandoning ancestral traditions to adopt human daring, staging dangerous stunts to prove themselves. Elvari academies were rewriting military training to include human improvisation drills, where cadets were deliberately deprived of resources and forced to survive. Entire fleets were requesting human officers as advisors, convinced their presence was the difference between victory and annihilation. The Federation had always prided itself on cultural diversity, but now it faced something entirely new. Humanity was not just another culture in the mix. Humanity was becoming a blueprint for survival. And of course, the humans on the forum noticed. Threads popped up like wildfire. "We are infecting them. Humanity X is spreading. First we gave them memes. Now we give them nightmares." But beneath the humor was unease. Some humans expressed pride, saying they were glad their madness was helping others endure. Others worried that the galaxy was learning only half the lesson. One user wrote, "They see our strength but not the cost. They do not see the graves we stand on." That comment went viral. For every alien celebrating human influence, there was now a countercurrent of caution. A Drevek scholar replied, "Perhaps we should not become like you. Perhaps we should learn from your survival, but also from your scars." It was the first real debate the Forum had ever seen, and it was not confined to the Forum. Across the Federation, protests erupted. Some citizens embraced human philosophy, calling it the key to survival in an increasingly hostile galaxy. Others denounced it as corruption, claiming humanity was dragging everyone into barbarism. The Council found itself in an impossible position. To condemn humanity would risk shattering the Alliance. To embrace them fully would mean acknowledging that the Federation's oldest traditions were crumbling. And in the middle of it all, the humans kept posting. One thread became legendary: "We are not heroes." It began with a soldier's confession: "Stop calling us heroes. We are not. We just do what we have to do. Sometimes it works, sometimes it costs everything. You want to learn from us? Learn this. Survival is ugly. If you follow us, be ready to pay the price." The responses were overwhelming. Thousands of aliens replied, many thanking the soldier, others expressing fear. But the most upvoted reply came from a young alien recruit. "If survival is ugly, then I would rather live ugly than die pretty. Teach us." That was when the Council realized the truth. Humanity was not spreading like a culture. Humanity was spreading like a religion. Not worship, not dogma, but belief. Belief in the power of defiance. Belief that no matter the odds, there was always a way forward. The Council issued new orders. The Forum was to be monitored constantly. Not to suppress it, not to censor it, because doing so would only make it stronger, but to understand it. To study humanity the way one studies a fire. To see where it spread, and how much could be contained. But deep down, the counselors knew the truth. Fire cannot be contained forever, and the galaxy was already burning. By now, the Forum was no longer just a curiosity. It had become a battlefield of ideas, and the galaxy was choosing sides. Some species embraced the human way with open arms. Colonies that had once cowered under the threat of raiders began painting human slogans across their walls. "We do not run. If death comes, let it choke on us." They trained their children in games modeled after human war drills, encouraging them to face fear head-on instead of avoiding it. In marketplaces and starports, alien merchants began advertising goods with the phrase "human tested," as if it were the ultimate guarantee of reliability. Other species recoiled. Entire worlds banned human literature and blocked access to the Forum, calling it toxic to civilization. The Karin elders declared that humanity's influence was leading their youth astray, pulling them away from centuries-old rituals into reckless chaos. The Elvari academies accused human philosophy of undermining discipline, claiming that improvisation led to collapse. And yet, even in these places, the infection spread in whispers. Rebellious youth quoted human sayings under their breath. Soldiers scrawled, "What would a human do?" onto their armor. The bans only made the stories more alluring. The Federation Council found itself paralyzed. The debate stretched for days, sometimes weeks. One faction argued that humanity was destabilizing the galaxy, turning orderly societies into powder kegs of reckless ambition. Another faction insisted that without humans, the Federation would have already collapsed under the weight of its enemies. One leaked transcript revealed the desperation inside the council chambers. "If we suppress them, we lose them. If we indulge them, we become them. Either path terrifies me." Meanwhile, the Forum continued to thrive, untouched by politics, fueled by the very chaos the council feared. One thread that gained traction was titled, "You all think we are brave. Here is the truth." It was written by a human survivor of 3 wars, and his words struck a chord across the galaxy. "We are not brave. We are terrified. Every battle, every loss, every scar, we feel it as much as you do. The difference is we keep moving anyway. Bravery is not the absence of fear. It is dragging your fear along and spitting in its face. If you want to be like us, stop trying to erase fear. Learn to carry it." The replies from aliens were filled with awe. Some admitted they had never considered bravery as coexistence with fear. Others confessed that this realization changed everything. They no longer felt ashamed of their fear, but empowered to use it. Yet, among the admiration, there were darker human voices. One soldier wrote, "You want to be like us? Then know this, we do not just fight because we want to live. Sometimes we fight because we do not care if we die. That comment rippled across the forum like a shockwave. For the first time, aliens began to grasp that humanity's strength was also its curse. The willingness to endure, to suffer, to embrace death if necessary. It was not just resilience. It was desperation carved into their very being. Another thread followed soon after, one that the Council classified as potentially destabilizing. Its title was simple: What We Fear Most. The human poster explained that the galaxy kept asking what made humans strong. But few ever asked what haunted them. And so he told them, we fear becoming the very monsters you see in us. We fear that one day we will stop laughing, stop joking, stop pretending that this madness is choice, and embrace it fully. We fear that we are not showing you how to survive. We are showing you how to destroy yourselves. That confession silenced the forum for hours, a rare event in its chaotic history. Replies trickled in from alien users who confessed they had never considered that humans might be afraid of themselves. Some expressed sympathy, others admitted it terrified them even more. And yet, as always, the humans broke the silence with humor. One user replied, "Do not worry. We are scary, but we are also stupid. That balances it out." Another added, "We might be monsters, but at least we are funny monsters." The laughter returned. The thread was pinned at the top of the forum for weeks. The Council could not ignore it anymore. They convened a secret committee, dedicated solely to monitoring the cultural impact of humanity. Their conclusion, revealed years later, was stark. Humanity has become a mirror. To some, they reflect courage. To others, madness. But most dangerously, they reflect possibility. Possibility that fear can be challenged, that survival can be redefined, that rules can be broken. This reflection will spread, with or without their consent. And when it spreads too far, the galaxy will never return to what it was. By then, it was too late. The fire was already loose. The forum had become more than just stories. It had become scripture. Not in the religious sense, but in the sense of a guide, a living, breathing testament to the idea that survival was not about caution, but defiance, and humanity, monsters or not, had become the galaxy's reluctant teachers. The crisis began at the edge of the galaxy, far beyond the mapped lanes of the Federation. A signal, faint at first, then undeniable. Entire colonies vanished in silence. Fleets sent to investigate never returned. The Council debated endlessly, paralyzed by fear of the unknown. But the forum was already alive with speculation. Threads with titles like "It is Coming" and "Final Boss Unlocked" flooded the board. Aliens posted desperate questions. Would humanity stand with them? Would the madness they admired finally protect them from the darkness approaching? The answer came before the Council could act. A convoy of human ships, old freighters welded into war machines, jumped into the frontier without authorization. Crews of soldiers, farmers, miners, anyone willing to fight, headed straight into the unknown. The Council raged, demanding answers, but the humans on the forum answered first. You do not wait for monsters to knock. You kick the door down and punch first. Reports began to filter back. The enemy was unlike anything the galaxy had faced. A swarm mind, devouring worlds, infecting everything it touched. Entire fleets dissolved like sand before the tide. Yet the humans did not retreat. They adapted, improvised, and threw themselves into battles that no one else dared attempt. And the forum documented everything. One alien officer posted, "I saw a human ship ram the swarm, even after its engines were gone." They laughed as they did it. They said, "If we burn bright." A medic wrote, "They kept fighting even after infection took them. They burned themselves alive to stop it from spreading. I wept." They joked. Another thread described how humans, cut off from supplies, dismantled their own ships to build weapons, turning life support systems into bombs. They died in droves, but each death bought time. Time for the Federation to rally. Time for species who had once feared humanity to finally fight like them. The galaxy changed in those days. Othari warriors who once despised humor laughed as they charged into battle. Vayari medics stitched wounds with anything at hand, whispering human phrases as if they were prayers. Karen soldiers abandoned rigid doctrine and fought with improvisation, defiance burning in their eyes. The contagion was complete. Humanity's madness had spread. And for the first time in recorded history, the Federation fought not as scattered nations, but as one. The final stand came at the fortress line, a chain of colonies meant to halt the swarm before it reached the core worlds. Every fleet, every soldier, every weapon gathered there. And at the center, as always, were the humans. The battle was chaos incarnate. Ships tore apart in firestorms. Colonies burned. The swarm pressed forward, endless, relentless. The council was ready to call retreat. But then came a single transmission, broadcast across every channel. A human captain, her ship bleeding fire, her face lit by the glow of destruction. She spoke with a calm that shook the galaxy. "Do not run. If we die, let us die standing. The swarm will choke on us before it touches your homes. Fight. Fight until you cannot. Fight until there is nothing left to fight with. Fight, because that is what it means to be alive." The words ignited the Federation. Species who had once trembled now screamed in defiance. Fleets that would have scattered held their ground. Colonists armed themselves with whatever they could find. The swarm was unprepared for the madness it faced. The battle lasted days, then weeks. Entire fleets were lost, but the line held. Humanity led the charge, bleeding, burning, refusing to surrender. And as they fought, the galaxy followed. When the swarm finally broke, retreating into the abyss, the cost was beyond measure. Thousands of ships gone, entire colonies reduced to ash, millions dead. But the Federation survived. And when the smoke cleared, the forum lit up like never before. Stories poured in from every corner of the galaxy of bravery, of sacrifice, of laughter in the face of annihilation. Aliens who had once mocked humans now wrote with reverence. Others admitted fear, not of the swarm, but of the fire humanity had unleashed within them. One thread rose above them all. Titled simply, "We survived because of them." An Othari officer wrote, "We thought humans were monsters. Perhaps they are, but in a galaxy like ours we needed monsters, and for that I thank them." A Vayari medic added, "They carried fear like a torch, and with it they showed us the way." And finally, a human reply, upvoted into legend. "We are not monsters. We are just what monsters fear." The council never spoke of it publicly, but the truth was undeniable. Humanity had changed the Federation forever. Their madness had become its strength. Their scars had become its lessons. And though the galaxy would never stop fearing them, it would also never stop needing them. The forum remained, buzzing with stories, jokes, confessions, and warnings. A place where the galaxy remembered not just how it had survived, but why. And at the top of the forum, pinned forever, one human message remained. We do not run. We do not surrender. If death comes, let it choke on us. That is humanity. That is survival. The galaxy read those words and knew them not as myth, not as exaggeration, but as truth. For the Federation had seen the fire, and it would never forget the monsters who carried it.